Marvel has been extremely consistent for over a decade, while DC has produced a few masterpieces in an otherwise incohesive and inconsistent set of films. Apple has produced the iPhone since 2007, and every iteration has been a consistent, solid product that slowly and iteratively improves as technology progresses. Android, on the other hand, has been delivering vastly different products since 2008, utilizing different manufacturers and allowing these manufacturers to modify the operating system itself. Android has allowed their experiences to be disjointed, but not without benefits over Apple. I think you can see where I'm going with this. There's a clear correlation between the path that Marvel and Apple have chosen, and DC and Android have chosen, and more importantly, the way people react and perceive those strategies. Marvel hitting their stride with the MCU set them on a clear course to success. They changed the way many young people look at films. Directors for Marvel are hired hands, furthering an overarching storyline in an ever-expanding universe. This allows Marvel to ensure that the movies they create are always similar in style and further their plotline piece by piece. Many people obviously enjoy this strategy. Marvel movies fill theaters because people know they will get a certain level of quality and entertainment no matter what. Others view this strategy as being risk averse, hindering innovation in the film industry, and killing independent creativity from talented directors. Apple is the same way. They produce new iPhones very similar to the previous iPhone. There is always something new, but it usually is some technology that's already been tried and true for a few years, which ensures a solid, quality experience for the user. The iPhone has almost a 50% market share in the United States, which clearly shows people are committed to their platform. But just like Marvel, many will argue that Apple does not take risks, and is often years behind Android phones when it comes to new cutting-edge features. This leads to many people describing the iPhone's operating system, iOS, as being boring, due to not changing much over the years. I'd compare it to the way Marvel treats its directors. Think of directors as the operating system. Marvel removed a variable that would make their films feel less cohesive by controlling the powers of a director. Apple removed one of the largest variables to their experience by hindering what iOS can do, ensuring a quality experience at the cost of fast-paced change and innovation. Their strategy, even with it being flawed, seems to have worked for over a decade, and it's won over a large enough percentage of people that those who don't appreciate it have to look for alternatives like DC and Android. DC for many years now has been providing audiences with exactly what they aren't getting on the other end with Marvel. They're getting darker and more risk-taking movies. Sometimes it works out. Take the Dark Knight trilogy. They're 3 amazing movies that are critically acclaimed, and I would argue mostly due to their practical effects, grounded storyline, and characters, not to mention the performances that are unforgettable. These films happen because Christopher Nolan was able to execute on a clear vision for the character of Batman. Without the creativity of a talented director, I think we can all agree those films would not be what they are today. But unfortunately, it's not always the way DC films pan out, just to name a few. But for the Dark Knights to happen, we need the Batman v Supermans. We need a studio willing to take a risk. The biggest side effect, though, is inconsistent experiences. Audiences can't be as certain what kind of experience they'll have in the theater when they go to see a DC movie. For example, many parents critiqued The Batman earlier this year because they didn't expect the movie to be as dark and adult as it was. Despite hardcore fans maybe finding this perspective odd, it's because DC films have so much variability. The average person not knowing so much about movies and not having knowledge of the current state of superhero films might not be aware that they need to do a little more research for DC films before taking their kids to see them. Not only that, but the lack of a cohesive universe brings so many different tonal changes between films and different experiences that audiences don't automatically have confidence in the type of film they're going to see, despite some DC films being leagues above Marvel. The result of this is many fans who love DC movies and wait in anticipation for another risk-taking masterpiece, while they alienate others who desire consistency. Android has gone down a similar path. It's produced some incredible feats of innovation, being the first operating system to support things like wireless charging, fast charging, and insanely powerful gaming phones. Manufacturers are able to innovate because there's no guardrails. Android exists for the manufacturers to have a foundation to work with. It's the reason that Samsung phones work differently than the Google Pixel phone. Despite having the same underlying experience, Samsung adds a layer on top of Android to make it their own, which enables Android to change and innovate quickly despite the lack of cohesion. The consumer, though, just like when going to a DC film, does not know what to expect. What new features will they have to learn? How different from their last phone will this new one be? The answer to both of those questions is a lot. I think it's clear what the issue with this strategy is, but for many people, these experiences are a light in the darkness. The cinephile, the power user, or even the average Joe tired of the same old thing all appreciate this variation to the norm because of the battle going on across industries to produce cohesive, dependable, and consistent experiences. So what does that mean for the future of these companies and franchises? Well, in my opinion, I think some cracks are beginning to show in the Marvel and Apple formula. For example, Marvel's Phase 4 has produced some of the worst movies and TV shows yet, and though they're consistent tonally and furthering the MCU, I think a lot of people are finding Marvel boring and even describing how they're experiencing Marvel fatigue right now. The same thing kind of goes for Apple. iPhone sales have plateaued, and despite maintaining massive smartphone market share, Apple has had to look to subscriptions for their services to increase revenues. Even though it's a smart play to keep people in their ecosystem while making more money off of each dedicated user, it shows that the lack of innovation has left them at a standstill with their star product, the iPhone. On the other end of things, the future looks really bright, in my opinion, for DC and Android. James Gunn has taken the helm for DC, and it seems like we should be getting a more cohesive DC universe that hopefully consistently produces great films without losing their dark edge. If you saw the end credits scene after Black Adam, I think we can all agree that the future looks bright for DC, and where Marvel fans feel fatigued, DC fans are becoming invigorated and ready for more. Android's on a similar path. Google purchased Android in 2005 and has slowly begun to standardize aspects of the operating system. Security has always been a concern due to Android's disjointed implementations across manufacturers, but Google's finally improving security drastically and providing a more comprehensive operating system that manufacturers don't need to edit as much. Google's making the Pixel phones too with a pure Android implementation, while allowing manufacturers like Samsung to continue producing phones with a less altered version of Android. And innovation's not showing any signs of slowing for Android, as some of the most cutting-edge AI technology is being utilized and developed in the Android ecosystem. So as much as all these comparisons might seem random, I think it's an important correlation to recognize to be able to understand fans on both sides of the aisle and where both the tech and film industries are heading. Hopefully this gave you a better perspective into both worlds and what it means for the future. I think the future looks bright, and I think everyone can agree it'll be exciting to see what happens. And hopefully independent films that directors like Quentin Tarantino and Martin Scorsese want to make get funded and actually are respected, and young audiences, as they grow up with all these Marvel movies, understand the value of those films. I think we're going to head in that direction, and hopefully with DC shaking things up, it won't be such a monopoly on the movie industry and superhero movies in general. Anyway, guys, thanks for listening and watching. I really appreciate it. Let me know if you enjoyed this style of video. I like doing these long form videos from time to time. If you did like it, please hit that subscribe button for movie reviews and other movie related stuff as well. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. See ya.